Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, Wednesday edition, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I'm Max Sports in the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook pages. Please like, follow, and share our Facebook pages, and subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great Northeast Streaming Sports shows. We're also on Instagram and Twitter. Our website is nessp.info for information on all shows, guests, their bios, sports information stores, links to those stores. I'm Mac with your co-host Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Together, we're bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports teams from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning, Mac.
So, Jack, today on the show, we got a lot of guests coming up. We have starting off Carter B with our NHL update. Then the Philly sports guy is in with all the Philly sports news. We got Brady Tinker from the Cowboys Life, a very, very popular podcast in the Dallas area. In fact, he's even getting paid for that podcast. That's how good he is. We also got Brett Kell, our baseball expert, that will be in near the end of the show. So a lot of guests, Jack, a lot of information we're going to go through today. Buckle up your seatbelt because we got a lot of stuff going on. Good morning. Okay, Jack.
We're covering all the sports.
Yes.
Baseball, we're covering football, we're covering hockey, and on and on. And, of course, there's a lot to talk about in the NBA at some point.
Yes, we do, Jack. And in fact, before we get Carter on, let's get a little bit into the sports updates. Now, since we are mainly about the local sports, I want to talk a little bit about Joe Judge and what happened after the first day, Jack, of practice in pads at the Giants training camp. So as they're going through you start getting a little bit more excited as you're hitting, the physical nature's coming out in you. And this running back breaks a big run, in Jabril Peppers hits him kind of hard. And when that happened, the tight end, Ingram, decides he's going to push Peppers. He pushes Peppers over the top of the other safety, Logan. A huge practice-clearing brawl breaks out. And they're going at it. And Daniel Jones ended up at the bottom of the pile. Daniel Jones even got involved in it, Jack. So Coach Judge, being the great coach he is that I love, old school coaching, can't get enough of it, lines them all up and runs gassers. 100-yard sprints, swearing like a sailor. And then he has them lines up to do push-ups. And they all do push-ups. He even sent the coaches off the field. He said, get the hell out of here. I got this. So after the practice was over, Daniel Jones was questioned about it. And the biggest question is, what are you doing at the bottom of the pile, Daniel? What are you doing? He said, hey, I'm part of the offense. I'm not separate from them. So, Jack, here go the Giants. Getting physical, getting excited, and here comes Judge lays down the law.
You, Mac, with your old school stuff, I mean, you're living in the past, Mac. All this shows us the lack of control that Joe Judge has with the Giants, the lack of maturity the team has. This is his second year. He had all of last year to set in a level of maturity. These aren't new players to him. I can understand if this was last year, he was starting out as a coach, he wants to lay down the law. What did he do? He diminished his assistant coaches. He sends them off the field, okay? He sends them off the field. I got this. We don't need you guys there. And he's sending a message to the players. These assistant coaches really aren't that important. I'm the man. I have the full say, okay? And Daniel Jones to be immature enough to go in the bottom of the pile. He wants to show guys he has that back. Who's he exactly fighting with? You're a team. I can understand scuffles. Scuffles take place all the time. Small, quick interactions take all the time. And then, good gosh, he has them running wind sprints and doing sit-ups and push-ups. They have to be doing that stuff anyway. That's not punishment. That's part of their conditioning. So what are they going to normally do? They're not going to normally do that. They're going to wait for Coach Judge to punish them. They should be doing that darn thing each day. Listen, Mac, When I was training for marathons when I was young, I would do a lot of those wind sprints voluntarily. Okay, I just don't see it. I still try to do it. I won't call them sprints anymore because I'm too slow. The effort is still there, but the speed isn't. But the thing is, I'm not overly impressed with Coach Judge. This is the second year. That level of maturity had to come in next year. It just shows the Giants mentally aren't in the place they should be.
Jack, I know, you've really never played physical, put on your equipment football. There's a feeling you get before you start, when you get in your pads and you start hitting, and the feeling you get when you start hitting. And this feeling, I can't even describe to you. And if I could, you probably wouldn't understand it anyway. But there's a certain amount of animal instincts that come out in you. And there's a certain amount of joy at really walloping somebody, really being physical with somebody. And what happens is you get caught up in it. Now, this isn't the only team that this happens to. In fact, most teams this happens to. When they first start hitting, or even during the year, they start hitting. People are competing for jobs. People are competing for the coaches to take another look at, and you get caught up in it. Now, to have a full-blown brawl, of course, you don't want to have on your team. But you've also got to see the other side, Jack, besides immaturity. You got to see the competitiveness. You got to see the wanting to hit so bad that you lose your cool. And this is the type of thing where a head coach has to step in and take care of it. Joe Judge did exactly what he should have done, supposed to do. And Daniel Jones, jumping in there because the offense and defense are going at it, competing, did the exact right thing too, Jack. I know it's hard for you to understand.
I do understand this. Jabril Peppers, okay? Yes. Evan Ingram, Daniel Jones. They're not fighting for jobs. The coach would want those guys to be leaders. Jabril Peppers, a lead on the defense. Excellent safety, kick returner. Evan Ingram, if he can catch the ball this year, might be one of the best tight ends in football once he learns how to catch the ball. Okay? Daniel Jones, who you especially want to be a leader. So you have a guy you want to be a leader. You're punishing him by making him do push-ups. And then you expect the other players to rally around him. It doesn't work that way. Sit them down like adults the first time they do it. Give them a talking to the first time, guys. We're not going to tolerate this nonsense. Did you see the movie Miracle, with Herb Brooks? It showed during practice one player getting cheap shotted by another because Boston College and the University of Minnesota were rivals, and they didn't quite adjust to the USA team concept yet. He got them together and explained this is going to stop right now. He laid down the law. He made it clear. He had them all talk a little where they were from, saying we come together as a team right now. Okay? That's the way you do it. You treat these guys like men. Coach Judge is treating them like kids, like boys. You should treat them like men.
Let me ask you a question, Jack. Don't you think somebody that plays a sport, a game, for money, don't you think they're a little bit immature? Seriously. I mean, don't you think that? Don't you think?
Bill Bradley, who became United States Senator, an Oxford scholar, was immature?
Yeah, at that time when he played, yeah, of course he was. To get out there and to do this, and whether you're doing it for money or not, I mean, this is going back to the roots. This is going back to hitting and getting hit. This is going back to seeing who's got the will and who don't. It's sort of like boxing, Jack, right? I mean, if you think about boxing, what grown man would want to get in the ring and beat the hell or get the hell beat out of him? He's a little bit immature. He's a little bit of a kid. I mean, that's what makes sports good. That's what makes sports good. That's why people love sports. Because now you are acting as a kid. You're out there throwing a football around. Of course, it's with grown men. And this is what we follow. When we follow baseball, what's more interesting? Somebody hitting a home run or both teams going at it in the middle of the diamond? Everybody wants to see both teams going at it in the middle of the diamond. Right?
I think a cat on the loose running around security trying to catch it, that's a little more exciting than both. Did you see that the other day, Mac? They wanted security to catch the cat. And did you see security tank it, Mac? They didn't want to lean down and grab the cat. They didn't want to get bit. They didn't want to get clawed. They had no training on how you could catch a cat, and they were scared, so they tried to make it look good, Mac. Like I'm sure the way you did when you played the games when you were younger, you couldn't execute the play. You wanted to make it look good at the end, like you were stretching out for a ball. You had no chance of catching, so you took a little extra dive for the ball or whatever.
Yeah.
But listen, you know, you're talking about a brawl taking place on the field. That's so rare compared to a home run. And I don't think people don't mind a brawl as long as they know no one's going to get hurt. I would hope people wouldn't want anyone to get hurt. But listen, you're living in a kind of unstable society in the sense that things go on. A guy could be on the 20th floor threatening to jump, and you have some morons yelling, jump, jump, jump. So, you know, there's not a sense of reality there. But listen, with Coach Judge, he has his way of doing things if he feels it works. But if you want to identify leaders, Jabril Peppers absolutely should be a leader of the defensive unit at this point. He's been around. They got him in the trade for Odell Beckham Jr. Hey, kudos to Dave Gittleman. That trade has worked out for the Giants, what they got in return. And Daniel Jones, if he's your franchise quarterback, he absolutely has to be a leader. And it's one thing you reprimand these guys verbally, and you tell Daniel Jones in front of the team, you're supposed to be a leader, these guys. That's what we're counting on you to be, and being on the bottom of the pile. And that's a leader of all the players, I would tell him. You know, there are ways to go about it, but to treat them like kids the old-fashioned way, sprinting, push-ups, sit-ups, yeah, it's just not for me.
I love it. I love it, Jack. I love it. I love the team getting excited. I love the head coach stepping in and making them and sending a statement. And that's all. So Carter just messaged me. I resent the link to him. So if you're out there listening, Carter, the link is there, and pop in as soon as you can. So,
Carter's been doing this show a long time. Just hit the darn link, Carter. I mean, I'm backing you on this one, Mac. What is so complicated here? You send the link, you open the link, and he's on the show the time, producer schedule him in.
In the internet, anything could happen, Jack. You know it as well as I do. So here comes Carter in with his NHL update. Good morning, Carter. How you doing?
Carter, if you're going to be late, Mac would want you to run around the block a few times as punishment, do sprints back and forth, and do some push-ups.
Yeah, I was planning on doing that after the show anyway, so I'll get a
See, it doesn't bother Carter.
Good answer.
So Carter, let's get into the NHL updates. Got some news out there. Let's see. We have the NHL rejecting the Krakens' deal with goaltender Philip. Hopefully, I'm saying this right. Grubauer. Am I saying it right, Carter? Goalie from
Grubauer.
Grubauer. Front-loaded contract. So the Krakens, I don't know if it's because they didn't know because they're new or tried to slip something by, but the NHL was all over them, and they're going to have to restructure that deal before they accept it. And, you really don't hear too much about the NHL and contracts, really. They work together really well with the teams and the players. They sort of have a good working relationship, better than most. So when they say front-loaded in the contract, Carter, what do they mean? Do they mean that, they're offering them too much in the beginning, that they got to spread it out more, or why does it even matter, really?
That's exactly what they mean. It's just offering them Grubauer a lot of money in the first couple of years of his contract. So by the end of the deal, it kind of, evens out in terms of a cap hit. So a lot of teams opt to do that mainly because most of these stars that are demanding big-time contracts, they want to get paid, and the teams want to make sure that they can pay them without having to kind of regret paying them that money in the first place, right? They obviously want to make sure these players live up to their contract. So, this is pretty common in the NHL to front load a contract. I've never seen a contract rejected by the league before, but, it seems like Grubauer wants to be with the Kraken, and the Kraken clearly want Grubauer on their roster. So I'm pretty confident that something will get done soon.
Okay, I wanted to. Mac mentioned something I did want to talk about, so it came up really in the beginning. Alexander Ovechkin, he signed a 5-year extension with the Washington Capitals for $47.5 million. That's $9.5 million a year. Now, Ovechkin is one of the all-time greats. I think we can agree on that, and he's closer to his prime than not. You know, I would think that. I don't know whether you agree with that, Carter, or not. But think of it, he's getting between 9 and 10 million a year. Now we see these NBA contracts. Guys are making 40 to 50 million dollars a year, superstars. I mean, why is the NHL paying such a small amount? Is the NBA making so much more revenue that they can afford it? Or does the players union or the players, you know, is everyone in it together in the NHL realizing for the product to survive, they'll take a lot less money, and it's still a heck of a lot of money. You know, you give them lifetime security. But why are the salaries in the NHL so much lower, you know, than the other sports, especially the NBA that's played during the same time?
Well, I think the big thing with that is the salary cap. I mean, the NHL has, I believe it's the lowest salary cap out of the 4 major professional sports. You know, you're looking at a guy like Steph Curry in the NBA who signed that massive 4-year contract the other day. He's making, I believe, 60 million a year or something close to that. Alex Ovechkin's making around, I would say, around 45 to 50 million. So,
Yeah.
um,
47.5 million for 5 years is reported. Curry was 215 million for 4 years. So Curry's making about 54 million a year, and Ovechkin's making about 9.5 million a year. And Ovechkin is as good in his sport as Curry is in his, or comparable at least. Okay, no matter which one you pick, comparable.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, at the end of the day, it just has to do with the salary cap. I mean, the NHL just doesn't have that much money to dish out to some of these star players. And, I do think the NBA does a better job at marketing the game than the NHL does. I mean, the NBA has a lot of things that I wish the NHL would implement. If I began to go into that, I'm sure this would take up a lot longer than I have on the show, so I'm not going to do that.
But
But at the end of
we'll definitely talk about that, Carter, because that is very interesting. Not today, but we'll definitely get that in about, you know, the marketing, because, you know, it's the same thing with the NFL as opposed to the MLB too. I mean, there's a drastic difference in the way they promote their sport. So we have Marc-Andre Fleury. He's going to go to Chicago from Vegas instead of retiring. People thought he would retire. I mean, I guess the love of the game, Carter, of your sport, it's hard to retire for something you've been doing so long and been successful at. And then, you know, what do? So good news for Chicago, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chicago's still getting a quality starting goaltender in Marc-Andre Fleury. And at the end of the day, I think Fleury still wanted to keep playing. I think that, you know, with the way that everything ended in Vegas, I don't think Fleury was obviously happy with that or content with the way that it ended. And he's getting a fresh start with the Blackhawks. And, you know, to be completely honest with you, I hope he has all the success in the world against the Golden Knights. I wasn't really too happy with the way that ended either. I mean, you know, to trade your franchise player is one thing, but to not even tell him anything and have him find out on Twitter is something else. So I hope Fleury has all the success in the world against the Vegas Golden Knights this year.
Speaking of things in the news, it's really crazy. Evander Kane is accused by his own wife of betting against his own team, saying that he is has a gambling problem. She did this on Instagram, you know, why would the NHL let a gambler, some guy that has a gambling problem, gamble? Now the NHL is investigating. I mean, I can't imagine your own wife going on there and doing this and not knowing the repercussions of this.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. I mean, I've seen a lot of things in my time watching hockey, but I don't think I've ever seen this. So, you know, I don't really know what to make of it right now, to be honest. I don't really like to judge things like this before you know all the details and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, it's kind of crazy to hear about this, especially considering Kane was probably the Sharks' best player all year long. So, it's hard to believe that he'd do something like this, but he's had financial issues in the past. He filed for bankruptcy a few years ago. So, I'm not going to say it's the most shocking thing in the world, but at the end of the day, it's still pretty, insane to hear about.
You got a question from David. I don't know if you know the answer or not. Do you know who the highest paid hockey player is, Carter?
I do. It's Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers. He's making $12.5 million a year.
There you go.
So,
and that's nothing compared to the other sports, but that's a lot.
It's nowhere even in the ballpark. So
wow. I mean, I have a feeling that's going to be addressed because these guys, the hockey players, they read the papers, they see the news on the contracts. So the same questions we're asking, they're especially asking. And somehow I could smell a strike coming up when this collective bargaining agreement, I don't know when it ends with the NHL, but something big has to go down, especially with the deal the NHL signed with ESPN. It's hard to believe extra money isn't there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this goes back to the conversation we were having before. I mean, I saw something on Twitter the other day that the NHL is one of their leagues that gives a lot of their revenue to the players. I think it's around 50% that winds up getting put back into players' salaries. So, at the end of the day, I mean, the NBA does certain things that allow them to market the game better and allow them to make more revenue off of certain things. And maybe if the NHL did that, they would have more money to dish out to their star players, but that's just simply not the case right now. So you kind of just got to work with what you have, I suppose.
Well, Carter, backstage right now, I got Philly sports guy Pags, and this is going to be about players, including the Islanders and the Flyers. So let's bring them up. I want you both on here for this about some acquisitions and people being let go. Let's bring Pags up. How you doing, Pags?
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good. So for the Islanders, Nick Leddy and Aberle, they're going to arbitration, right? They're restricted free agents. The Islanders lost 2 players to Kraken. The Philadelphia Flyers, they got a lot of new acquisitions. Ryan Ellis, Keith Yandel, to name a few. And, what effect does this have on the teams, guys? And I'm going to start with you, Carter. I mean, these guys are going to arbitration. They should probably win. And you have the other ones that are choosing not to for whatever reason. And I mean, how does this affect your team? I mean, the already lost players, got a guy going to arbitration. I mean, does this set you back? I mean, for the next year, or is it just something that's normal part of hockey?
Well, I'll start out with this. With Leddy and Eberle, they're not on the team anymore. They're not free agents this year. They're not set to go to arbitration. They traded Leddy to clear cap space, and they exposed Eberle in the expansion draft for the same thing. So that's not really a big deal. There is one player for the Islanders going to arbitration though, and that's Adam Pelech, their number 1 defenseman. So, I'm not necessarily shocked to see this happen. I know that Lou Lamoriello kind of works behind closed doors, and I think they're working on a contract extension right now. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I mean, all arbitration really is, it's just that you kind of set a hearing, a date for a hearing, and if you can't come to a contract agreement before then, the third party kind of determines how much a player gets on his deal in terms of both term and salary. So it'll be interesting to see if they can come to an agreement by their hearing date, and if not, then we'll see what happens in arbitration.
And with the Flyers, Pags, I mean, you picked up a bunch of people. Will Atkinson is 32 years old. He did, produce a 40-goal season a couple years back, but he's kind of declined a little bit. Ellison, and I hope I'm saying this right, Provorov, or is it Provorov?
Provorov.
They could have a good defensive team back there, a good defensive pairing, but he's been having a lot of injuries over the years too. He's been kind of declining. So, I mean, here's another example of, whether it's being lost in free agency or picking somebody up in free agency. I mean, teams change, and how well these pickups are was going to determine for the Flyers, and it's going to determine for the Islanders, the people they lose, what kind of team they're going to have next year. What are your thoughts, Pax?
Well, if you watched them last year, they stunk, and especially on the defensive side of the game. So, although Ellis wasn't as exciting a pick for me, the one that we got from the Sabres, the defenseman Ristolainen, definitely he was the guy that really kind of intrigued me and was happy that they got. The Flyers did a big salary dump is really what they did. They got rid of a lot of salary for a number of years. To be able to trade away a player, Jacob Voracek, who had 3 years left on his contract at $8.5 million for a guy who's got 1 year left on his contract and is going to not get re-signed. That was a great trade for them. So it opened up a lot of cap space. They needed to change some of the chemistry that this team had from last year. And I was glad to see that he did something because, like I said, it was hard to see. They tried to say that they were going to make this great deal with the Kraken. And the Kraken said, yeah, nope, we ain't doing none of that. And which was fine, as far as I was concerned. I thought that was a little bit of gamesmanship, like, oh, yeah, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this, and we're not going to do any of it. So my expectation is that, this coach is a little bit on the hot seat, especially after last year, and that he needs to have some new players in here. I'm tired of the old regime coming out with the same team over and over and over again, thinking that we're going to get a different result and it not happening. So I was happy to see some change.
Carter, you brought up a great point. I've talked about this a little bit in the past about marketing. Of course, it has to do with viewership. It has a lot to do with a lot of things. But there are certain sports that really do it well and others that really don't. And when you come on next week, I want to get into that with you a little bit, especially some of your ideas on how they can, promote hockey better. It's like baseball. I compare hockey and baseball in a lot of ways, right? Your draft is very much the same. It's a lot of local viewership as opposed to national, where the NBA and NFL are the same that way. It's more national than local. And so when we come on next week, I want to talk to you in detail about that, because I think it's really important that this gets out there, in hockey and in baseball, but even more so in hockey, because really Major League Baseball's union is the strongest of any sports, and they pretty much get their way. So when you come in next week, I really want to talk about that, Carter.
Yeah, it sounds like that'd be a fun topic to talk about.
All right, Carter, you have a great day. Thanks for joining us, as he always does. Our NHL expert, Carter B. Check him out. The 2 on O show. I don't know what's going on with that. You guys going to have anything running on that soon, or is it kind of being put on sleep for a little bit?
Yeah, we're trying to work some stuff out now. We both have a lot going on with work, and coming the school year's coming up soon, so we're trying to figure something out. So
okay, so folks, check for it anyway. 2 on O hockey show. Carter B, one of the best minds in hockey that I know of anyway. So thanks for coming on, Carter. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too. So there you go, folks. Carter B with your hockey update. Bringing in Pags right in behind him. Big Flyers fan, knows a lot about hockey too. So, Pags, let's get to the Phillies. In the last 10, they've gone 6-4. They're only 1.5 behind the Mets now at 54-33. Last night they won 5-4. Zach Wheeler with the start, not a great game, but you game 107, you're still in the race. What do you think right now the Phillies got to do? I mean, the Mets are kind of, I don't want to say in a tailspin, but they're 3-7 in the last 10, so they're kind of falling off a little bit. Pitching, do they got to come together? Did you make enough moves at free agency to maybe solidify some positions? What are your thoughts about the Phillies right now?
Well, I think that the Phillies are starting to become the best of a bad bunch. In terms of that, the NL East, The Mets are doing what the Mets typically do at the end of, starting towards the end of the season, is start to trail off and, fall off. And, the fact that they have DeGrom not going to be able to pitch until September is going to be a really big deal. I mean, they're having a real difficult time with the Marlins right now. I think the Marlins have taken 2 of 3 so far, and they play again today. And the Phillies are not necessarily like they could have gained them some more ground against the Pirates. I mean, the Pirates are like the worst in the league, and there it was. They got 1 hit through 15 innings before they started to put some runs on the board, and then of course they at least got away with like 15 runs on the Sunday game. But realistically, they should have played a much better showing. So they need a little bit more consistency. I like the pickups that they did at the trading deadline to be able to give a little bit better. Like I've been saying, every time we see Vince Velasquez out there, every time we see Double V, we never get a W, and that's a big deal, And it's he goes out there every 5 days. Well, that's a problem. And then
you're talking about the Mets with their meltdowns in the past, but I think what we have to focus on are the reinforcements. How do you counter this argument? I'm going to say the Mets have reinforcements coming back, pitching at some point during the year. DeGrom, Carrasco, Syndergaard, Lindor will be coming back. I mean, those 4 guys could contribute mightily. How did the Phillies match that? Do they have anyone on the shelf that could be coming back? Because with those 4 guys coming back for the Mets at some point, those are difference makers, especially over the month of September.
So there's only one guy that's really going to be coming back, and he may get back to September. He just started his rehab assignment in Lakewood, which is single A right now, and they're giving him about 30 to 35 days to get to the roster, to get to the main roster, and he's only going to be back in in the back end of the bullpen. Like, he would be a 7th or 8th inning guy because that's still where their weakness is. The fact that they had a really good, they didn't have most of their pitching staff in the back end of the bullpen and was able to get out with a win yesterday was a big deal.
By the way, yeah, I had predicted the Phillies were going to get Craig Kimbrell, but I have to say kudos to Jed Hoyer, the GM of the Chicago Cubs. He did something rare in sports. When he cleaned house with his star players, he accommodated them. He sent them where they wanted to go to. I don't know whether that was good for business. Craig Kimbrell has a daughter who's not doing that great, but in the Chicago area. So he kept him in the Chicago area and sent him to the White Sox, even though he would have been the most perfect fit for the Phillies. And I don't know whether the Phillies even bid on him. Chris Bryant is from the San Francisco area. He sent him over there. Anthony Rizzo is from the New Jersey area. He sent them to the Yankees. And it's ran sports like that, for a GM and organization to say thank you to players who are part of the Cubs championship team to do that. But with that said, with all the loyalty, did the Phillies really try to bid big on Craig Kimbrell? Because if they overwhelmed the Cubs with a package, loyalty, it'll only go so far.
With what, though? They didn't have.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Did they have any?
They didn't have the wares. They really didn't have the wares to be able to do that. And they made trades. They made some trades specifically to stay under the cap. So there was some thought process about that they didn't want to get over the luxury cap, and that specifically with Texas, where they got money back in exchange, so that they didn't go over the salary cap because they're right up against it, and that was I thought that really was telling. The fact that they didn't really have the prospects to be able to make these types of trades, and they're so far away. I mean, it's not like they could win this division, and that would really be the ceiling for them. Beyond that, you could start to say, okay, like, are they going to make it in the playoffs? Well, anything can happen. And, when the bats get really hot, like if they stay as hot as they are with the bats right now going into the playoffs, that could really carry over a little bit. But as they say, good pitching is always going to beat good hitting, and that's really what's most important in the playoffs. And I just don't see the Phillies having the type of pitching staff that would be able to carry and transcend into a long postseason.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Pags. I mean, if you win the division, to me, that's a heck of an accomplishment for you guys this year, and something you could build on. You know what I mean? Because I mean, you're talking Giants, Dodgers, Padres, even Milwaukee. I mean, those are some strong teams out there. They're fully loaded. Milwaukee maybe not as much, but I mean, they got some good pitching over there too. So all those clubs have some good pitching on them, and they sure got a lot of power too. So I mean, it would be tough for the Phillies or anybody from the East, whoever wins the division, to go out there and raise any cane. That's for sure. So,
Well, and I keep waiting for the Giants to try to trail off, but they're just not. They keep on going.
They got a great manager that's keeping them on top, Pags.
I tell you, I can't say that. I mean, he stunk here. He stunk out. They stunk out the whole entire city when he was here.
He didn't get support from the front office and the fans like yourself. He needed some love, some support.
I disagree. He came out. He would come out of the box strong and then would trail off. His analytics would start to fail towards the end of the season, and he was never wavering. He had to stick around. He's actually so I started to pay attention a little bit now because it's not just all about coconut oil, because that's what it felt like around here. That's all he was caring about was getting his tan and putting on his coconut oil. But when he goes out there now, he's actually learned from being in Philadelphia, because Philadelphia actually does understand a little bit about baseball. And when you make stupid moves, we let you know about it. And he learned from those moves. He's now gotten away from a little bit of the analytics that he's so stout on. He says, okay, I'm going to let this go a little bit longer because even though the analytics say I got to get him out of there, he's pitching so well, I'm going to leave him in because I've already learned from 2 seasons of getting my butt reamed by the Philadelphia fan base that, when you take him out a little too early, we wind up losing that game. So now we keep him in a little bit longer. And you know what? We don't have those problems. And those are the types of things that he needed to learn. So he is a great baseball mind. And that was how he got touted here, that he knew a lot about baseball. He learned a lot about managing here, and he took it over to San Francisco, and he's doing a really great job over there. It really is impressive to see how much he's learned over those last couple of years where he stunk out loud to go over there to turn that franchise around some.
I mean, listen, the Giants surprising everybody, even themselves, I think. I mean, they're really playing really good ball. So let's get to the Eagles a little bit, right? So I was reading some of the camp things and everything going on over there and some articles. And Hurts is having a little problems with his accuracy. Missing the hoops, missing wide receivers. Big thing for the Eagles, whether they have a winning season or not, is going to be Hurts. We know that he can run. We know he's an athlete. We know he's going to make plays. Do you think that maybe Pags, maybe this is a case where accuracy has got to be worked on a lot before he becomes a good quarterback?
It's interesting because I hear different reports all across the board. It's like some of the media pundits are pushing the narrative that they want to push, and some of them are pushing different narratives. I listened to him on my way in here today. He was on Sports Talk Radio, and I tell you, he's got confidence, and he understands that he's not a finished product. He's by no means Tom Brady out there. You know what I mean? So he knows he's got to work on his game. But he's got a certain cachet about him that really is it's going to bring together this team, I think, in a way that Carson Wentz didn't. And I think that's a big deal. I think there was a huge lack of leadership last year. And amongst everything else, you need to be better than 50%, passing accuracy. And if you're not doing that, you're going to start to have problems. But then again, I think about Donovan McNabb, who was, that one year he was like 50% accurate, and they still wound up going to the, NFC Championship game. So, I mean, there was a lot of things that occur. And, of course, he's only 4 games in. He's still going to learn a lot about this NFL. And, yes, we're going to go as far as our quarterback takes us. And that's going to be a really big deal. I think that it's not as big a deal right now. Him missing the rings and him missing receivers or overthrowing receivers and such like that. He's also put a couple of, balls on strings where it's like literally he's put it into very small windows and throwing it in spots where only the receiver can get it. And those things are not able to be taught. So obviously, does he need to do that more? Yes. And is it, the better he becomes at that, the better the Eagles are going to be. Yeah, that's why I have them going a little over 500, because I think that he's got some of the intangibles that Carson Wentz didn't have, and ultimately you can will your team to win sometimes. And sometimes the will of a quarterback, the will of a coach is going to end up in a W.
Reportedly, the Eagles are one of the teams that has an eye on the Deshaun Watson situation. Now, Houston might deal Deshaun Watson on the cheap. And if it's something that the Eagles could afford, like let's say a 3rd and 4th round draft choice next year, that changes the equation. It's worth taking a chance because Deshaun Watson, odds are that if he's not allowed to play, he's going to be forced to sit out 1-2 years at most. And even if he's forced to sit out 2 years, let's say by the NFL, he's going to come back as a young man. He's going to come back as an elite quarterback. I mean, and let's be honest about it. Jalen Hurts isn't going to be the starter if they get Deshaun Watson at any point. It's just a matter of time before Deshaun Watson would assume the starting role. How interested would the Eagles be if they can get him cheaply?
Well, when you're talking about getting him for a 3rd round pick, that becomes a no-brainer. That really does become a no-brainer. You have to grab him then. Whether he's going to be here or not, you take that flyer on that. You know what I mean? So when they were talking about 3 first-round picks, I ain't interested in giving up 3 first-round picks for him, for somebody who may or may not play. I mean, the NFL is doing Houston a favor by not putting him on the exempt list, the commissioner's exempt list, to say, okay, we're going to give you the opportunity to go ahead and save your franchise some because you guys stink at running a franchise. And that's kind of what happened. The biggest issue that I have with Deshaun Watson isn't what he did off the field. It's the fact that he's been crying at Houston for the last 2 years that he wants to get out of there. And if you bring him to another team where he gets all excited, he's in that honeymoon phase where everything's great, and then all of a sudden things start to go a little bit bad or a little bit south, what makes me think that he's going to want to stay here and not start crying that he wants to leave again? Quarterbacks are becoming babies lately, and they all want to go somewhere else, and play somewhere else. The grass is always greener somewhere else. And Rodgers was like even a big deal with that, even though he re-signed with Green Bay. He realized, well, hey, the grass isn't really that greener anywhere else because everybody else is crying about how they want to leave there too. So my expectation is that I think that Houston should, that bed he's got to lie in that bed. They got to lie in that bed. They're going to wind up stuck with him. And I don't expect that any team is really going to be able to do that.
Houston doesn't want him to start the season. The Texan organization wants to move on from him. The feeling is mutual at this point. It's only a matter of time, which team he's going to go to. I think Houston's going to just cash out and take the best offer, whatever it is. They're not going to play hardball and expect a major haul in return. They could have gotten one before. That's the thing about it. But wherever he goes, he's going to have to start. That's the whole thing about it.
I think, guys, the biggest thing, are they willing to take on this contract with all that stuff going around? It doesn't matter about the picks to me that much. It matters what team's going to pick up that contract. And I mean, Houston ain't going to pay it. So what team will be willing to pick up that huge contract he signed, that agreement he made with Houston? What team's willing to pick that up with all the things swirling around him? I don't know any GM to me that would do that's out of their mind. But
and the Eagles just cleared away $14 million. They restructured some contracts to clear away $14 million. And that signaled a little bit to me. I'm like, well, what does that mean? What are they trying to do here? Does that mean that they are working really close and maybe they're trading this conditional first, second round pick from Indianapolis that's now looks more and more like it's going to be a second round pick because you have the surgery that just happened with Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
So, is that on there? Is it maybe a third or a fourth round pick that Houston came down so far off their high horse that instead of 3 first rounders, they're going to take a third rounder? I can't imagine that any franchise can put that high of a ceiling on a player and then say, yeah, we'll just give him away now. You know what I mean? It's just I don't see that happening. And if they were to do that, they of course are the Houston Texans, so that's how they run their franchise, and it wouldn't be ridiculously surprising, but it would just be ridiculous.
You know, Carson Wentz, you just mentioned him. He's not an Eagle, but in a sense, he'll always be an Eagle in a certain sense when his name comes up. And him getting injured, and Frank Reich at Indianapolis having no serious backup plan as far as the quarterback goes, because Carson Wentz's confidence would be so fragile if someone could challenge him. But the two guys out there, Philip Rivers said he's open to the idea of making a comeback. I'm not sure whether Indianapolis still has the rights to him. He might want to come back there. Nick Foles was talking how great it was to play for Frank Reich. He was begging to come back practically. He's saying, I'm a Chicago Bear for now. But, you know, it would be so great to play for him. And they got Jacob Eason, you know, from Georgia, who was drafted in the 5th round. He's not going to be the starter. No NFL experience coming from the Bills. Did he even play a down last year? They've got to do something. But Carson Wentz is so fragile, the confidence, that they're not doing anything, and it could affect Indianapolis's Super Bowl chances. By the time he comes back, they may have lost a couple of games they could have won had they addressed the backup quarterback situation. They still might do it, but indications are they're not.
I agree. And I am really excited about the fact that I knew that we weren't going to get a first-round pick out of this. I knew that something was going to happen, and we were only going to get a second-round pick. And, well, now that just solidified it. I wish I could have laid a lot of money on it because I knew we were not going to get a first-round pick, you know, come any reason. So,
No doubt.
and I'll be honest, I'd love to see the soap opera of Nick Foles going to Indianapolis. That would be so amazing for me to watch. I would sit there. That would be must-see television for me. I'd follow the Colts just as much as I follow the Eagles this year, just so I would be trolling them like nobody's business.
Can you imagine Nick Foles went to, you know what they're scared about, Frank Reich? That Nick Foles, Mac, is going to go to Indianapolis and they're going to be 6-1 by the time Carson Wentz is ready to come back. And how the heck do you go to Carson Wentz? Here we are all over again. Deja vu with the Eagles.
Yep.
So in other the training camp news, getting off Wentz for a minute. Devontae Smith, sprained knee. They said he'll be okay. That would be something if he went down. That would be a kick in the gut. But Jordan Mailata, yeah, him too. Pancake Graham runs over a linebacker. He says there is no competition at all. I am the starting left tackle. I love that. That's great. And Zach McPherson having a good training camp for y'all. That's very important. That you got that young kid doing his thing, man. So some good news.
Defense is going to be what carries this team this year. The defense. I'm so happy. I tell you, I danced a little jig when I heard that Schwartz was not coming back. That was probably the biggest deal going into the end of the season last year, that I did not want to see Schwartz's defense come back. You know, the guy does not know how to blitz or doesn't want to blitz, and because of that, we never got any turnovers and we never got off the field with 3rd and longs. You know, I think that we were the worst in the NFL when you had 3rd and 10 plus. You know, I don't know how many times 3rd and 15 that somebody would still get the first down. It was mind-boggling to me. And the fact that he could never, it always the front 4. Well, they started to stack up the line some with 6 guys, and 6 guys is always going to stop 4 guys, even though some of those guys are Fletcher Cox and such like that. You know, he never had enough. This guy's a lot more aggressive. I expect that we're going to see a lot more turnovers because he's going to make these other quarterbacks start to have to think a little bit faster, throw a little bit faster. These cornerbacks and safeties are going to be able to take advantage and get some interceptions. And I believe that's why I'm not as concerned about the 50 to 55% accuracy of Hurts, because I think the defense is going to help carry us a little bit this year.
Well, you're gonna have a good offensive line too, and to me, Pags, that's the key to the whole offense. There, but Hurts does have to do better than 50% passing. I'm sorry for you guys to be successful. Unless he's
Well,
going
and
to
the offensive line, that's how you win championships. The
right.
offensive defensive line, that's where championships are won. And
Unless
the fact that
he's-
Jordan Mailata is winning this, I've been pulling for him. He's probably my favorite player on this team right now, and I'm really excited that he has been
I am
he's
too.
been really impressive.
I am too. And you know something? Unless Hurts becomes the next Jackson, he's going to have to pick up that accuracy, Pags. You know that as well as I do.
I agree.
Pags, thanks for stopping in, guys. Check out the Philly Sports Guy. Great shows. He does a bunch of shows. He does Phillies coverage. He does the NFC East show. He's on TikTok. He's everywhere. And maybe
And real quick, if I may, right now, of course, I'm not painted up right now, but I am on day 5 of 22 days of face paint, where I am putting on a different Philly Sports Guy face, raising money for the Eagles Autism Foundation charity. Where on the 21st of August, I'm running in a 5K. So if you go to any one of my social medias, you'll find the link. If you have any opportunity whatsoever, please donate. From $5, $25, $500. I'll accept any type of donations. It's all for a great cause of Eagles autism. And like I says, every day you see me on social media, I got a different face on. So it's been fun to say the least.
Good stuff, Pags. Make this very quick because Mac, I think, wants to go to a break. So make it quick, please. We didn't address Andre Drummond coming to the Sixers, Dwight Howard to the Lakers. Did the Sixers come out ahead in this or not?
I would have loved to have Howard back. I would have loved to have had Howard back. I thought that he was a fan favorite. I thought that he really connected with Philadelphia. And it amazed me that he went back to L.A., where he wasn't really accepted as much. That he was always – but I think that Philadelphia showed LA how to utilize him in the best way possible. I think LeBron realized how much he was able to, even though they fought like brothers. So I kind of think that was a little bit of what's going on. Look at the LA Lakers with an average age of 32 years old. I think 8 of their 13 players is over 32 years old. That's not really a good recipe to win championships. But hey, listen, you got the highest paid player in the league right now in Golden State, who just got $54 million, and he's over 31, 32 years old too. So, I guess maybe that's the way the sport's going.
Listen, the Lakers picked up Carmelo too, so they should be dangerous next year. Thanks for coming in, Pags. We'll see you next week. Everybody check out the Philly Sports Guy and donate to his charities. Doing great work out there. Thanks a lot, Pags, for coming on.
I appreciate it, guys. Have a great week.
You too. So there you go. Philly Sports Guy raising money and acting funny, putting on the mask. That's crazy. I got a tagline for you, Pags. You can use that. Anyway, guys, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back on the other side with Cowboys expert Brady Tinker. Following the Eagles, we have the Cowboys. We do everything on this show. We'll be right back after these messages, folks.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol.
If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble. Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma.
I love you too. Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, legendary boxing writer himself, Jack Hirsch. And Jack, we had two great guests already, and we got one even better coming up next. Well, I should say better, but he knows a lot about Dallas. He's
You rating the guests now, Mac, in order or what?
Well, you know, yes, thanks for pointing that out for me, Jack.
You're like a scout. Yeah.
NHL expert Carter was on, which always does a great job. And the Philly sports guy always gives us our fill of Philly sports. And right behind him, we got our Dallas expert coming on right now, Brady Tinker, who has been covering the Cowboys probably longer than most people have covered a team. He's knows everything about it. And what I enjoy about having him on, Jack, is that he's pretty unbiased. I mean, he gives you straight answers about straight things. He's not a homer like some of our other guests, but he's really into what he does, and he's really good at it. So let's bring up Brady Tinker.
No, we blew it, Mac. We should have someone for the Washington football team, because you and I covered the Giants, then we just covered the Eagles, and now Brady extensively is going to tell us about America's team. But if they don't have a good year this year, should we erase the America's team label? Or should it have been erased years ago?
Well, I think maybe America's team means something different these days than it meant in the 70s when they 70s and the 80s when they had 21 straight winning seasons. I think maybe social media and all the things that we do and all the access that people have to the world, it means something different. But I think they're still America's team. It just it may mean something different. But how are you guys? All right?
They're doing good, Brady. But you know, I want to touch on that in a minute. And Dallas deserves to be called America's team, even though I am not a Dallas Cowboy fan. I'll tell you that straight up, because you know, we lost our defensive coordinator to them when he started up the Cowboys and became a huge rival right off the rip. But what they did promoting that team was like no other team did in history when they ended up doing the 4:00 games, having a second Thanksgiving Day game. The Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders going around the world to different events to promote this team. They did things under, I think, if I'm correct, it's Hank Stram, if I'm correct, saying what I'm saying.
Tex Schramm.
I'm sorry.
Tex Schramm and Gil Brandt, along with Tom Landry. And, you know, the behind-the-scenes stuff, too. They were really the first organization to go out and spend a bunch of money on computers. Yeah. And so, you know, I mean, I've been to Cliff Harris's house, and he's brought out these 50 and 80-page printouts that they printed out off of a computer that showed them statistically the probabilities of what play was coming at a certain time. This was 1971, 72. Nobody had this stuff. Yeah. They were ahead of the curve, not only on promoting themselves, but also on technology as to how to make their team better. They were.
Analytics began with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
They really did.
Yeah.
And there's this perception that Jerry Jones really didn't treat that trio that well, really, of Gil Brandt, Tex Schramm, and Tom Landry. Is that a bit of a myth?
Jerry has come out several times and said that he wishes he would have done it differently. On the other hand, and I don't want to go into this too much, but Coach Tom Landry was very ready to retire. He was very ready to leave. When Jerry got here, he didn't like him. He didn't like the look of him. He didn't like the cut of his jib. He didn't like the idea that guy was going to take over this team. He didn't think it looked right or that it was right. And so Tom made it as hard as possible. I will say that. That's where I'll leave that.
Okay. All right. So let's get to the Cowboys this year. Of course, training camp is open. Dallas and I would say Washington Giants will probably be battling for first place in the wild card. The Eagles, of course, are rebuilding. But you get a little bit of a drawback already. You have some injuries in camp. Cooper, a couple others. But the big one, of course, is Dak Prescott with his shoulder. Now, they were just trying to ramp him up, Brady, get him ready for this season. And now they got to kind of ease off the gas pedal a little bit and make sure that he's okay when the season starts. Hopefully everything works out for him where he can be the starting quarterback for the season. I know they're pulling him from the Hall of Fame game, definitely.
Yeah, I don't expect him to even throw many passes for another week or two. They're going to be overly cautious. He says this is on him, that his workouts on his own. You know, as we all know, injuries beget other injuries. Unless you really do all of the work, which I'm sure that he did, you tend to want to push yourself. And Dak Prescott is the kind of guy, after all the money he got and all that he went through, he's not going to rest. He's going to do the opposite. He's going to work harder. And I have a feeling that it's true what he said. He threw too many passes. He threw passes without standing on his legs, I'm sure, right? So he's probably on his knees or sitting in chairs. He's working on his core. And he's throwing and he's throwing and he's throwing. And, what these guys do that really care is when they go to working out, too, they work on all the things. They self-scout. They work on the things that they think they weren't good at. So I know that he was interested in getting more touch on his deep ball. So he overthrew. But apparently there is in the MRI a small tear in that shoulder. So if we were talking baseball, we'd be terrified. And I'm not sure, since we're talking a football quarterback, why we're not terrified. But everybody seems to think that just sheer rest for maybe up to 2.5 weeks will do it. You're returning, this entire offensive line at this point, and so they've been together for a long time, other than the change they had at center. And you've got the same running backs, and you've got the same wide receivers, and you've got one returning tight end, and so I think the familiarity with what this offense is and is going to do there's not a big difference. So I think they might be able to get away with it. The only thing that I would really like to see, and I know everybody wants to see, is how does Dak react to a catastrophic injury to a leg? He's a leg guy, He plays with his lower half. So is he reticent at all to break the pocket a little bit early and get out like Mahomes doesn't throw from the side? Would he rather stand in the pocket now? Is he protective of that? Those are the things that I think we want to see that may make a difference somewhat in the offense, so people kind of know, okay, early on, we're going to have to let him stay in the pocket. We're going to have to make ourselves more available to him earlier in routes. Those kinds of things, I think, are the things that they needed to find out. And I'm certain that at this point, they don't really know them.
For a couple of years, there was that contract standoff, Prescott with the Joneses, and eventually the Joneses blinked. But if they didn't, where was Dak Prescott going to go coming off this injury? Where was he going to get a contract nearly as good as what he got from the Cowboys? They didn't have to give in, I felt.
Yeah, I can see both sides of that, because that was my initial thought was, boy, did he screw up not taking the deal that he could have got, a year earlier because of injuries in the NFL. But the truth is, there's still a half a dozen teams out there right now that would take him and that would have taken. I think the numbers just said I'm with you on the injury, and that was my first thought. But the numbers say there's still 6-7 teams out there that would take him right now if they wheeled him in a wheelchair.
I mean, Brady, could you imagine him with the Saints or some contender like that?
The Saints, the Broncos. There's plenty of teams that are rolling out their quarterback that aren't sure that's who they want. I'm not sure the Raiders are stuck on Derek Carr. So, you can go through probably 15 teams that would have taken him in an instant. Now, would they have paid him the catastrophic, massive number that he got? Maybe not, but it would have been a big number. It would have been a $350 million number. It just would have. Apparently, this is just the league. The league has so damn much money and makes so much money because of television, and COVID didn't hurt this league. COVID may have hurt baseball, but it didn't hurt football.
So true.
So I understand what you're saying, but and I thought the same thing initially, but I think the answer is yes. He'd have gotten some similar money somewhere else. Yes.
So your defense has been probably the thing that's held the Cowboys back over the last so many years. I mean, the offense under Dak has performed really well. They can put points up. New defensive coach, going to make it easier, simpler. Has been doing it a long time. What is going to be his effect on this defense, Brady?
Well, Dan Quinn is a really good communicator, and so everybody seems to think this is going to be great. That they have things going for them and things going against them. One thing going against them is they were probably the second or third worst defense in the NFL last year, one of the worst defenses in NFL history, and certainly one of the worst defenses in Cowboys history, almost no doubt. It probably was statistically the worst defense in Cowboys history. So now they're playing the card of, well, there's a big chip on our shoulder. Well, the truth is, a lot of the guys from that defense are gone. A lot of the guys that they're counting on are new guys, whether they are rookies, whether they are guys who've been brought in, whether they are guys who didn't play much who were here, who are now going to play more. And so that they're playing we got a big chip on our shoulder. I think that mostly translates to we're tired of hearing about it. And so we'll be ready. So, the key words are position flexibility. They feel like they have a lot of athletes, maybe more athletes on defense and playmakers, especially from the linebackers back, than they've had in some years. So they are going to put a bunch of different guys. Micah Parsons is in. That's their first-round draft pick. He's in. But Jabril Cox was the 4th or 5th-round draft pick, and he's freakishly athletic at a big size. So they're going to stick him in different places, and he's going to run all over the field. At this point, Leighton Vander Esch, which he is in most beginnings of the seasons, is looking good and is healthy. The question is, how many games does he go before the neck begins to give him problems? But at this point, when Vander Esch is healthy, he's a freaky athlete too. And all of a sudden, they had a safety step up last year who ended up being a very good athlete, and it's the second year, for their star cornerback from Alabama. So they feel like they're going to show you a bunch of different things and a bunch of different packages that are going to confuse you and that are going to generate more turnovers. And so far in training camp, they're generating turnovers like crazy, except that it's Garrett Gilbert and Ben DiNucci who are throwing the football.
Yeah, Micah Parsons fell to number 12 to the Cowboys in the draft because of off-field issues, reportedly. Yep. They were fortunate to get him at that position, but he is a rookie, and they have him playing a lot of different roles. Is it too much to put on a rookie? I mean, let him grow in one position, but is he really that good where he could assume those roles and turn into a leader in this first year?
Well, I think Vander Esch will call the defenses for him, so he doesn't have to worry about that. All he has to do is sort of do what he's told and react as an athlete. So that takes some things off him. He's going to play in the middle, but Vander Esch will call the defenses. So that will take a lot off of him. All he's really got to do is be instinctual and understand the defense. That's the big thing. I mean, we all embarrassingly saw Cowboys defense the first 6 weeks of the season last year that almost admittedly didn't understand the defense.
Yeah.
And too bad. They brought in a new defensive coordinator last year. They had about half the amount of time to put things in. And maybe it was not a great idea to go with a complicated defense during a season where you have half as much time to learn it. But that's all out the window. But the truth is, a lot of this is new as well. When you talk position flexibility, and yes, you're in at safety or you're in at linebacker, or you're in at nickel, but you're actually playing down here, or you're actually leaning to this side. That sounds like it could be complicated to me too. But maybe Dan Quinn is good enough to say, don't get too caught up in what we're calling it or what you're doing. We're going to put you in a position in this area to make a play on these types of plays. And I think if that distinction is easy for them to understand, then they have a chance to be effective. And here's the, I in baseball, this is like counting money. When a good baseball player's in a contract year, damn near every year, all of us are old. Damn near every year, that guy steps up and has a good year. You can almost count on it, right?
Yeah.
He's going to get overpaid, and the chances are, unless he's got a big heart, he's going to go sort of back to being average. In football, I'm not necessarily sure that's the case, but this team is absolutely loaded with guys who could be in their last year, including DeMarcus Lawrence, who had off-season back surgery. Now, we didn't know DeMarcus Lawrence had off-season back surgery until about 5 days ago. Now, apparently it was a cleanup. Apparently it's not something major, and it's something that he's actually had 2 other times since he's been with the Cowboys, and it's a cleanup thing, and it makes him feel better. And both times that he did it before, he actually had really good seasons. But DeMarcus Lawrence is owed $19 million next year and $22 million the year after that. If they want out from underneath that at the end of this year, they'll get out from underneath a lot of it, and they'll move on. So actually, DeMarcus Lawrence is in a situation where he knows he could be out of here. The same with Jalen Smith. The same with Leighton Vander Esch. They did not pick up Leighton Vander Esch's 5th-year rookie deal. And then they brought in guys who were on 1-year contracts. DeMonte Kazee is going to come in and play some safety. Malik Hooker, they just signed. They're both on prove-it deals. So there are Randy Gregory. They're counting on Randy Gregory, who's had his issues, who I, by the way, love Randy Gregory. Okay, he's had problems since he was a kid with social disorders and everything else. He took to smoking dope as a kid. It was sort of what he did to get by. And when he got into the league didn't allow it. And he's been suspended, I think, 4 times. So this is really his last chance. But the truth is, he is a phenomenal kid. If you were around him, you'd like him. This is not just some dumbass. It's not. This kid is smart and can flat play. But the truth is, he's in his final year. So I think all of that can truly galvanize this team. And Dan Quinn, at his age, with his experience and his skin's on the wall, is good enough to get the most out of these guys.
Well, Brady, I coached for a while. And there's a term we use, out coaching the team, right? Where you make it so complicated that they can't execute. These players can't execute at that time, and a lot of people rush it. The Giants had that problem 2 years ago with the defensive coordinator, where it looked like the defense didn't know what was going on. And I think when you first come in your first year, especially your first year, and you got a team that's been having problems, I mean, just reading and reacting and going off some formations and maybe mixing it up a little bit is good for a base, right? Just to get the base involved and then grow as a team grows. A lot of coaches have a problem with coming in and, they could put it down on a chalkboard or put it in a paper, but to get them to execute it, they have problems sometimes. So I'm glad to see Quinn there. I think Quinn he's an old coach. He knows what he's doing, and I think he will make it at least a little more simpler in the beginning, where the Cowboys could actually go out and rip somebody's head off instead of worrying about if the motion man is going to the right or left into the slot. I mean, sometimes you just got to go hit somebody, and it's that simple.
I also think that you're going to see the veterans who were here last year start the season, because the truth is, if I was a betting man, and I'm talking to some betting sites these days, the Cowboys will probably start 0-2. You're starting at Tampa, then you got to go, I believe, to play the Chargers. 2 teams that are probably flatly better and more ready at this point than the Cowboys are. But then the schedule softens. They have a good chance to win 3 or 4 in a row. But I mean, they're going to start Diggs at cornerback again. Anthony Brown starts at cornerback again. Jordan Lewis starts in the slot again. Vander Esch and Jalen will be out there, right? Tank will be out there leading them. So the truth is, the core of their 11, they'll probably have 9 returning starters, maybe even 10. And then they're going to work these 2, the 2nd and 3rd round draft pick at cornerback. They're going to work them in. They're going to work some new safeties in. They're going to work 2 guys that Dan Quinn brought in, Keanu Neal and one other that played for him. And you know how coaches love that. Get me 2 or 3 guys that played for me, so they'll tell people. It's an old Parcells thing, right? Parcells, wherever he went, brought in 6 of his guys. And Quinn has done that as well, and he's got 2 pretty good players here that are talking him up.
And the offensive line that was decimated last year is supposedly healthy this year.
Yep.
Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, it is. Tyron Smith is always dealing with something, and he's dealing with a little tweaky something now. But on the other hand, watching Tyron Smith, he has absolutely almost hurt several people who dared, try and get around him or bull rush him, and that looks like the old Tyron Smith. It's rare to go to training camp without Tyron Smith accidentally hurting someone who doesn't realize how strong he is and just how bad a man he is. La'el Collins is back 100%. So they'll have their best player back at right guard. They moved Zach Martin around a lot last year. He's probably one of the 10 or 15 best players in the entire league. So, they get all of those guys back. I'm not saying that they're the same offensive line they were 3 or 4 years ago, but they're a top 10 offensive line, and they know each other.
Definitely. Let's move out a little bit to the outskirts of the team. There was some news first about Michael Irvin being robbed by some fans. They took his necklace or something when he was, in a hotel lobby. He said he was pretty upset about it. The necklace was very personal to him about some kids, and the diamonds represented his kids and everything. So he was pretty upset about that. And Troy Aikman's name came up as either a GM or an advisory role, which is really interesting to me because, Troy doesn't back down from, the Cowboys and Jerry Jones at all when he speaks about them if he thinks they're wrong. And, Jerry Jones said he wasn't adverse to having Aikman, come and help the team out in some way. But Troy has a very nice job commenting on games, too. So what do you think about those two situations, Brady?
Well, Mike's always out and around and in the mix, and I like Mike a lot. Mike is probably the most loyal, passionate Cowboy maybe that's ever played, and so things are going to happen to Mike. He's out all the time. He's on the road all the time. He's working all the time. He's amongst the people all the time. I'm sorry that happened to him. I consider him a friend. It's hard not to like Michael Irvin. It's just impossible. If you wanted to not like Michael Irvin because in years past you judged some things he did or some things that he said, you get around Michael Irvin, you can't not like Michael Irvin.
Troy Aikman wasn't crazy about him when they played together. He didn't really like Michael Irvin's habits.
You say that, but on the other hand, the 2 or 3 times that I remember Michael ended up in court over things that he might have done wrong, guess who the single Cowboy was sitting in the back of the room? It was always Troy Aikman. So, yeah, I think you'd be wrong in saying that. I think that Troy would get frustrated with Michael's antics, but did he like him and did he need him and appreciate him as a player? He absolutely did. As far as Troy being a part of this organization, that's been known for a while, especially around here, that Troy would love to be a part of the Cowboys organization. On the other hand, as you've said, he's left no doubt that there are plenty of times when he wonders, what's going on here and feels like it's too soft an organization. And the truth is, I don't think Troy's taking any advisory position job here. He wants to be the general manager. And that's what he wants to be. And he wants
it would never work out. Jerry would never give up complete control, and that's the only way Troy Aikman would take the job and leave the cushiony position he has at Fox.
That is exactly right. So asked and answered. He would like the job. He would take the job. He's not going to get the job. And Jerry's not going to relinquish the job and step back and just be the quiet owner. Good luck.
Especially with his sons and everything involved. It's almost like a family unit there working, So to bring somebody in like Troy would probably upset the apple cart, and there would be a lot of.
It would not shock me if something happened to Jerry that Troy would be at the top of their list. Steven's not going to take over being GM. That's not what he wants to do. Steven, works with the contracts and deals with the players and the agents and is a money guy, and Steven also runs 6 other businesses of theirs. These guys they're not billionaires for nothing, and it's not just about football. They're still drilling oil wells, and they're still fracking, and they own, they own about 80% of the area around this new facility up here in Frisco, Texas. So, they're busy guys. So Steven, if that ever comes to pass, Steven will hire a general manager. I have no doubt about it.
So Brady, back to the team, and I just want your responses on this. Biggest question mark for Dallas on offense. We already know when not counting Dak. I mean, Dak, we'd already. I have mixed feelings on this. Do Do you think Zeke has lost a step or lost anything? Or do you think it's because of the offensive line in the last couple of years, injuries? I mean, I still think Zeke's a very effective, maybe a top 5, top 10 running back. That's my opinion. You see him a lot. What do you think about him?
He's as thin and fit as we've ever seen him be. We've been critical of him really since even his rookie season. When he comes in, he always looks a little bit thick, a little bit like he's going to play himself into shape, which I think is pretty accurate. He's fit and thin. He wasn't very good last year. He lost a lot of carries. They didn't win a lot of games. I think there was some disinterest across the board as this group began to struggle. And I think they took a beating in the press and they didn't enjoy any of it. So I think there is something sticking in them. But has he lost something? Sure. I mean, the guy that we saw in the first 2 years routinely broke 35 and 40-yard runs, routinely. Would run through a hole, run over a safety, and run 60 yards. We haven't seen that in 2 or 3 years. And I think we all know 4, 5, 6 years into an NFL career as a running back, you're probably pretty close to done. So, he didn't get a lot of carries last year, and maybe that's the good news. He's leaner, which he thinks will make him a step quicker. I thought, he sort of last year became this really good 2 to 4 yard gain guy, where you hand it to him on first down, he's going to get it on first down, and he gets a leaning forward 3 or 4. That's an effective play. 2nd and 6 is not bad, but it's not who any of us thought he was or should be. And in my opinion, the Cowboys haven't been very good in the last 2 or 3 years at getting him the ball on the move, on swing passes and stuff like that. And I asked him about it 2 years ago. I went to the locker room after a game where he had caught 4 or 5 passes, but all of them with his back to the defense. So he's basically, he's the final target. And I said, what is that? And he goes, well, I'm the last read. And I looked at him and I said, why? You're the second best player. And he really didn't want to cause any problems. He wasn't going to give me anything to run with. He just basically said, when I'm turned around like this, and Dak can throw it to me for a 2 yard gain where I get a helmet in the ribs, I'm the last read. My question is, why has he always got his back to the defense? Why isn't he doing what the really effective running backs catching the ball do, which is swing out of the backfield with their eyes up, catch the ball, and if they've only got one man to meet it, potentially it's a big play. They do it in Green Bay religiously. They do it in New Orleans religiously. They get these unbelievable athletes in open space, and they hardly ever do it with Zeke. Now, he had whatever he had. He can have 60 catches, but if he's got 50 of them with his back to the defense, they're not effective. All they are is a check down to make sure you didn't lose 7 yards on a sack. So that seems strange to me, and I think that they'll do a better job this year, of getting him the ball in the open field more, coming out of the backfield. I know I didn't necessarily answer your question. I think Zeke looks as good as he's looked in 3 years physically. Let's see if he may have lost up to 8 to 10 pounds. Let's see if that's too much. Let's see if the beating, it's always a balance in the NFL between running backs coming back and saying they've gained weight or lost weight. I got to gain weight because I'm taking a pounding. Well, I got to lose weight because I'm getting older and I've lost a step. So, which is most effective? Hopefully a guy who's been in the league 5 or 6 years knows his body and knows. But I think Zeke's on a bit of a mission. If I was a fantasy football guy, he would be a top 7 or 8 pick for me at this point. That also has something to say about running backs in this league as well.
Sure.
You mentioned before about the Cowboys. You think there's a good chance they're going to start 0-2. At some point, is Mike McCarthy going to be on the hot seat as the head coach? If the Cowboys close to the midway point, a 3-5 in a weak NFC East, still with a chance to win it. The Joneses stuck with Jason Garrett for a long time, but you got the feeling part of that was personal. Mm-hmm. They regarded him like family, and they probably don't regard Mike McCarthy quite the same way. It's more business. Is he going to be on amongst the hottest seats amongst NFL coaches if they get off to like a 3-5 start?
I would say yes. I think there's no doubt about that. I think last year was a tough year, and it's easy to say we're just going to push it over here and almost disregard it. Dak got hurt, and what were you going to do? There's hardly any team in this league that will survive a franchise quarterback getting hurt and go on and make the playoffs. So it's easy to say that. but there were things that they didn't like. There were too many things they didn't like, and coming down to play calling and fourth down fake punts and things that were odd, things that seemed from a head coach who'd been in the league this long, who'd won a Super Bowl, that he wouldn't do, things that seemed to be overreactions, things that seemed to be, one thing you knew when you were getting Mike McCarthy is he knew everything. He played with a Super Bowl quarterback. He'd won a Super Bowl. He'd been with an organization. He's not afraid of anybody. And he did a lot of things that it was like, really? And so I think those things, those little things bothered the Joneses and bothered the team a little bit. And I do think that this thing needs to look buttoned up. I think realistically, this is the most talked about team in the NFL almost every year. If not number one, then number two or number three, no matter how many damn games they win. And Vegas every year gives them an over, under, or 9 or 10, no matter how good or bad they are, and fair or unfair. But this team sits here at 9.5 with an over, under, I think right now. I would take the under. On the other hand, I would say that the under, if it's 9, still wins the division. It's a crappy division. I think Washington is a really well-coached team that has a lot of limitations. It's going to try and play a lot of 13 to 10 games, and they probably can as long as they keep everybody healthy. But other than that, I question the quarterback situation in New York. Looks like their running back is not going to be ready. So I think their defense is a little underrated. And obviously, Philadelphia is clearly, I think everyone agrees, is sort of giving in. So I'm not sure what it will take. I think if the Cowboys make the playoffs, even if it's with 9 wins, then Dan Quinn survives. If they don't make the playoffs, I would think he doesn't. And we'll see what happens. I may have said the wrong name, Mike McCarthy, because Dan Quinn was on my mind. There's certainly he's a viable.
Well, that's the guy who would take over for Mike McCarthy in season. That's what I would think, unless the defense is really
that's probably right. Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah.
So Brady, coming to the end of the segment, thank you for coming in and reaching out. I mean, we love having you on. And nobody knows the Cowboys that I know as well as you do, and we'd love to get you back on before the season starts and talk a little bit about the games and stuff. And there's only one thing I disagree with. I think the Giants have one of the best rosters in the NFC East this year, and defensively, wide receivers. Of course, a lot depends on Barkley, and everything depends on Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones takes that step, they're going to be battling you guys for first place. Trust me there. So
yeah, I don't disagree. I think the defense certainly is underrated. I think the defense can play, and the Giants just tend to be that organization the last 20 years that when that defense gets going, whatever their defense is, they become the big blue wrecking crew again. Yeah. So I don't think that they're far from that. I don't trust Daniel. And I really don't trust Daniel if his running back is a little bit iffy to start the season. I like him, and he can sling it. But I'm telling you, some of the things he does, it's just like, dude, you're killing your team, and you can't do it.
I agree.
For this year, that's got to be drilled into him. That defense on that side is going to keep games close. We do not need you dropping the damn football twice a game. We do not need you. The old Romo ad-lib plays from his first couple of years in the league. We do not need it. That defense and some version of a running game will keep you in games. Just don't F it up. And if he'll listen to that, then I'm with you. They'll be right there, but I have my doubts.
And I think a lot of people do. So I think it's make or break for him. And maybe for their offensive coordinator, the former head coach, too. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's a big year for both of them. Brady, again, thank you, and continued success, and we'll definitely see you again.
Stories, a cowboy life is what I've really passionately gotten into. I love covering the team, but it's kind of the same for all of us year after year. I was born and raised in Kansas City, but the thing that I found here is I got to know every year 6, 7, 8 of the players and a bunch of the former players through the year. So I started telling stories. The players tell me stories. I put them in audio form on a podcast called A Cowboy Life. And if people would check that out, there's a Facebook page, there's a website, and the Cowboys at Blue Star Media are going to bring it in this year, and we'll start with them as well in September with a Jalen Smith story that people will like.
Congratulations on that, too, Brady.
Thanks.
And that's the link, the Dallas Texans, the Kansas City Chiefs, Hank Stram, and all. There's that link, both places.
Yeah, absolutely. It was accidental for me. I was born in Kansas City, and I hated the Cowboys because they were on TV every week. And when I was a kid, my Chiefs weren't any good. I was leaning on my Royals. But yes, there is a tie to all of that, no doubt. The Hunt family is a wonderful group. So
Sure
you boys have a good day. Reach out and we'll get together before the season starts.
Sounds great, Brady. Have a great day, my friend.
Thanks, you too.
So there you go, folks. Brady Taker. Nobody knows more about the Cowboys than him. I mean, the guy just knows everything about the Cowboys, Jack. And even though me and you are not Cowboy fans, it's great to see somebody on with a lot of knowledge, so professional. So
we should go back sometime to the old days. Dallas Texans, New York Titans, who became the New York Jets. There's that little bit of a history there.
There sure is. There sure is. In fact, we'll call the Giants the New York Yankees or whatever they were.
The Boston Patriots.
Yes, yes.
Dave Pirelli, Jim Nance.
Yes. So, folks, we're going to be right back. We got Brett Kell coming up right after these breaks. Nobody knows more baseball than he does. So, I mean, Jack, we got people that know more than we do or everybody else put together. So we'll be right back after these messages, folks. Stay tuned as we'll have Brett Kell, our baseball expert, coming on right after this.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye. Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come? Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, from Brooklyn. Hey, isn't he?
That's right, Jack. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. And Brett Kell, our next guest, has explained what that song is all about. what based that song? Why did that song come into existence? Well, it seems back in the day, Jack, that the ladies did not, I shouldn't say could not, but did not go to the ball games alone. So they would ask the gentlemen to take them out to the ball games. And that's where that song came from.
That's fine. My beef, though, Mac, is with the 7th inning stretch. I mean, you're waiting too late into the game to get up the stretch. A lot of people start leaving at that time. Make it the 5th inning stretch. Move it up a couple of innings. That's my beef.
Well, Brett, our baseball expert from Binging Baseball, or Binging Baseball, but spelled Binging because he had to, because binging was taken. Brett, what do you think about that? You think the 7th inning is the right play time to have the stretch? Are you with Jack? Yes, getting old, so he needs to stretch a little bit more than he used to. So do you think they should have a quicker stretch, maybe the 5th, 4th inning?
I'm an old coach, so I don't sit down. I'm up and down all the time. I can't even, I've coached baseball, football, softball in high school, and at the high school level, and I can't even sit watch a football game. I have to pace back and forth. So sporting events in me, there's not much sitting sometimes with me because I'm a very active. The old coach in me makes me move around.
So are you telling me you're the guy at the stadium that won't sit down when I'm trying to watch the game? Are you that person?
I don't block people's view. I just get up and I'll go up in the
hate that. Oh, we never talked about it, Mac and myself. I absolutely hate that when people stand up in front of me. They're standing watching something. Sit yourself down. It is so darn rude. I wish the teams would address it, and anyone standing up, they should get removed. That's like a form of harassment. They're harassing me standing behind them. Well, I can't see the game. Now I'm forced to stand the whole time. Now I stand, the people behind me. It's I can understand the guy hits a home run. You jump up out of your seat. Of course, that's understood. But people standing, it's not so bad at baseball games, but boxing matches, some other events, it's a real pain in the neck.
I'll wait for the people behind, let's say it's a big moment. I wait for the people behind me to stand up before I stand up because I don't want to block their view. But if I get up and move around, I go up to the concourse. I don't actually stand at my seat unless the whole crowd is standing. But I'm a pacer, so it's just meeting the 7th inning stretch isn't very needed for me.
Yeah. Well, see, Jack gets mad when they do the wave, so don't listen to him. I mean, when they do the wave, Jack says, "Sit down," So that's Jack. He don't participate.
Can I just ask him a question before you get rolling, Mac? Because I was talking with my son-in-law's dad, who's a big baseball fan. We were talking about the independent league because we're planning at some point to get together, go to a Long Island Duck game. The Long Island Ducks, a team like that, what are the chances of the players ever getting to the big leagues? Do the scouts take a league like that seriously or not?
Well, this year they've signed a lot out of independent. The American Association has had something like 36 players, I think, signed out of there to affiliated baseball. There are guys that make it. Daniel Nava, most recently that I can remember, has made it, and he's played with the Red Sox, the Royals. Kevin Millar played with the Marlins, the Orioles, the Red Sox. There's guys that do it, and then there's guys that use it as a rebirth of their career. I can't. Why am I always forgetting the Yankee that went down and he played independent ball, but he had that injury and used independent ball. It's a great place for a guy that may have not been seen or may not put up the stats and didn't develop, as a body maturity wise, that gets another shot. And there's plenty of guys that get signed out of the independent leagues over to the affiliated ball due to injuries, due to guys not producing. A lot of guys have trouble with the wood bats, so you may be a star and I prefer the way the wood bat feels. I actually prefer that. It's a little bit more end heavy, so a lot of guys are used to a lot more balanced bat, and when they get to that wood bat, they struggle with it sometimes.
Wait,
the independent league guys use aluminum bats, you're saying?
No. They use wood bats. I'm talking about in college. In college and in high school, you use the aluminum. That's the reason the college summer leagues are so great, is because it gives the guys a chance to start experimenting with the wood bats. But they can use composite wood bats in the college leagues, which aren't exactly the same as just a regular ash bat or bamboo or maple. But actually, Staten Island's going to get another independent team here pretty soon. Also, I think it's with the Frontier League, if I remember right. I can't remember exactly. It might be the Atlantic League, but Staten Island's picking up a team, which is nice because the Staten Island Yankees just folded completely when they were not invited to affiliated baseball. So it'll be nice to see that. And then Wisconsin's grabbing another one for the American Association. So they're popping up more and more. It's a cheaper version of baseball, but it's still baseball, and it's you're not going to see the superstar, but baseball is one of those games is if the pitchers and batters are at the same level, just like at Major League or AAA or whatever, you're going to have the same amount of runs scored in a game. You're going to have the same amount of steals. If the competitive talent's all at the same level, it'll still be an interesting baseball game to watch.
Yeah, the game doesn't change as long as it's an even playing field. It's just, I agree with you. It's still exciting, whether it's high school or even Little League. If the talent is the same, it's going to be competitive either way. So Brett, let's get into the Major League Baseball for a minute. Free agency has come out. A big push by some of the teams that are involved, and maybe at least a wild card. And some teams just sold off the farm, and they know they're not in it anymore, which is always interesting to me. Me as a coach, I would always want a winner, and I would build to a winner. I don't care what place I'm in, but that's the business of baseball. So in the American League, fellas, the Rays are sitting in first, one game ahead of Boston, despite Boston going 3-7 in the last 10 games. The Rays are at 64-44. The Yanks take a step forward, 6 behind, followed by the Blue Jays and the Orioles. What do you think, Brett? Do the Yankees still have a chance? The Orioles beat them 9-0, then they went 13-1. It seems like they're always, even if they take 2 steps forward, they take 1 step back. Not sure. They should never lose to the Baltimore Orioles at all, no matter what. They should be able to beat the Orioles with their bench. So what do you think about the Yankees? Are they going to have do you think they have a legitimate shot at least getting a wild card this year?
Well, right now they're dealing with a lot of injuries, but the good thing is they do have a deep bench, and they have a lot of guys. And they have guys there like Clint Frazier that haven't produced, but at least can play at the major league level. Honestly, I would have traded Clint Frazier away. I think they could have got something a lot better in a trade deal when they picked up Rizzo or Gallo. If they would have sent Frazier away and give him a new look somewhere else, because I think he's kind of almost spent his time in New York and just hasn't produced like they expected him to. I would send him away, but they do have a deep bench and they picked up Rizzo and Gallo, so those lefties hitting at the short porch should definitely help out. But they've been dealing with a lot of injuries, and then they have another set of COVID happening again. And they had about 3 weeks, a month ago, where they had some guys and they had to postpone a couple games versus the Red Sox. And now it's with Garrett Cole and another player are apparently testing positive for COVID. So it's
Brett, I understand what you're saying about sending guys away, but Clint Frazier's value is at its lowest at this moment. So to just send him away and get a bag of peanuts back, I don't think it's the right thing to do. And people wanted to, drive Sanchez out of town earlier this year. Now he might be the Yankees starting catcher the next few years. So I hate to give up on guys because once you trade them away, that's it, and they have a certain potential. And you know about things like investing in a guy. And the Yankees have invested so much in Clint Frazier, Miguel Andujar, And it's very tough to give those guys away. The deal has to be substantial. That's why the Yankees didn't trade Luke Voigt once they got Anthony Rizzo, because they saw the return wasn't going to be that great. So they figured we may as well stay with Luke Voigt based on what we're going to get in return. So that's why I think a lot of times deals are made, unless you're going to get something substantial back in return. I don't think you get rid of a guy for the sake of getting rid of him, unless the guy's a menace in the clubhouse and, he's a poison to have around.
Well, Voigt also can play a couple multiple positions. So he hasn't done it in a few years, but it's one of those things of he's always that value. If an emergency situation, he can pop up and I believe he played right and he's caught before also, if I remember right. So he's
I didn't know Luke Voigt caught before, so he'd be good in an emergency. That he could catch I didn't know that he could catch an emergency.
So
okay, nice.
I believe he was a catcher and he's also played right field. So. And it's a lot of catchers, a lot of guys get drafted as catcher and they get moved around. And then it's one of those positions like the Nationals with their trades. They picked up two catchers and they already had a stockpile in the minors. And as they went with their trades, they picked up another two catchers. It's kind of confusing to kind of stockpile catchers, but they are one of those positions that it's hard to find a good one. And when you do, you want to hold on to them. But you have guys like Bryce Harper. Started out, he was a catcher in college. Now he's a right fielder. Mike Sweeney, when he played with the Royals, started out as a catcher, moved on. Buster Posey, he's gone on to first base. A lot of guys will move off for first, or they'll play. They'll be a catcher in the minors or in college or high school, and they're drafted as a catcher, but then they get moved to another position.
So. We have the Yankees. You think still have a chance? I mean, they got a good pitching performance last night, but again against the Orioles, we'll see. How Gil does the rest of the way. Chicago easily should win that Central Division, barring all the players don't get hurt at once. They're followed by Cleveland 9.5 back, Detroit, KC, and the Twins all below 500. So Chicago, it looks like it's going to cruise into winning that division. I don't see a wild card coming from that division at all, Brett.
No, I think Chicago will win it. It'll definitely be like the East will be up for grabs. Because Tampa Bay, I don't see them holding on very long because they've had so many pitching injuries. But the East will definitely be kind of like the NL West, where it's kind of it'll be going into September before we kind of have a lot more clearer picture. Same with like the West, you got Houston there, so Houston's probably going to win it. Oakland, if they get hot, possibly, but Oakland's known to get hot late in the year. So,
listen, guys, Oakland's only 2 games up on the Yankees, and the Red Sox only 5 games up on the Yankees for the 2 wild card slots. So the Yankees are very much in it, and Tyler Glasnow, I think he's out for the season for Tampa. Right, so that's a big blow to them. So all the Yankees have to do is play well, and everything will take care of itself.
Well, there you go. I mean, Jack will always have the Yankees included, the diehard fan he is. But he is right.
I just need to wear my Red Sox gear from now on.
I'll tell you, we'll talk about anything in baseball, and with Jack, it will always come back to the Yankees. A true.
Well, I've been to the old Yankee Stadium. I loved it. It was really fun. And I took my dad there because when my dad was a kid, there was no. When you had one game of the week, that was it. And he wanted to see the old Providence Civic Center. And this was stationed when I was in the Navy, stationed up in Rhode Island. I used to go to Fenway all the time, and I took him to Fenway. Took him out. He wanted to see the Providence Friars old building, and he wanted to see Yankee Stadium. And so it was fun to take the old man to see some old ballparks and just enjoy it like that.
Very true. So yeah, you're right. I think Houston. I think they have that. That's theirs to lose. They're too good of a team to fall to the A's. I think the A's have a good shot, maybe get the wild card, but I don't think they'll win the division. The Rangers have, they have just called out Baltimore and said that you think you have a bad team, look over here. So, I mean, Texas is just playing terrible ball. In the NL, the East, the Mets are in a slump, 55-51, 3-7 in their last 10. The Phillies 6-4. Climb within 1.5 game behind the Mets, followed by the Braves, Washington, and Florida. Mets have a lot of guys coming back, Brett. I mean, they got a couple pitchers coming back, position players coming back. They got some players coming back for this push. Do the Phillies have a chance at overtaking the Mets?
Like you said, the Mets are going to pick up some guys. And if DeGrom can stay healthy, because this is the second time they sent him down, and he's going to be supposedly going down to the St. Lucie Mets to rehab again. And so, like I said earlier this year, I listened to those games online, and it was great to, fun to hear the commentary on it. But they're -11 on run differential, and the Phillies are -17, and the Braves are +54, and that division has now become wait till mid-September to see what's going to happen. They got to someone out of those three teams. Two of the teams have to beat up on each other and kind of go 500 against each other for another team to kind of step up and kind of take it over and take care of the business with the other teams. Yeah,
I agree with that too. The Brewers, that's their division to lose guaranteed. I mean, I don't think Cincinnati can catch them. St. Louis playing pretty disappointing ball. And the West, San Francisco continues to edge away from the Dodgers slowly. They're 3 games up now, or 3.5. The Dodgers are 64-44. They're 6 games over the Padres. I don't think San Francisco doesn't care who the Dodgers pick up. Take every all-star in the league. We don't care. We're still going to beat you. I love the Giants this year. I think they're doing a heck of a job. Manager deserves a lot of credit. They're going to be at least a wild card team this year. What do you think? Do you think the Dodgers, with all their free agents, do you think they can catch the Giants?
Those 3 teams there in the West, they're all +100 on run differential. So they go out and they take care of business against teams. So I'm more like, I think the Dodgers will overtake them. When picking up Scherzer, he's just a workhorse and just goes out there and just pitches and does his business, especially when he's going to have that run support compared to what he had in Washington. Is going to be huge.
It's interesting part of that deal, Brett. The Scherzer deal. The Dodgers getting Trey Turner to play shortstop. Now Corey Seager's been hurt, but under normal conditions, you would think the Dodgers would re-sign him. He's a free agent at the end of the year, but I think the Dodgers getting Trey Turner signals Corey Seager's exit. In the offseason.
Yeah, and it's all kind of what they look at, and see, coming off of what the future holds for both players. Baseball is one of those sports that's known to pay for what you've done in the past, not necessarily what you're going to do in the future. And so that they overpay sometimes for what the person might be doing in the future. So it might come back to where they offer both guys and see who pays or who takes the better benefit, or they can go after both of them. One could play second or third and go from there.
I love the Giant deal, getting Chris Bryant, third baseman, who could be a third baseman for them for years to come, an impact player who I think his best years might be ahead of him. So, that has to be exciting for the Giants.
Well, and I say when it came to when they were talking about winners and losers in this trade deadline, I think all the teams that got the talent were the winners, and the teams that got the prospects were almost the losers, because it wasn't these big, huge blockbuster deals that was expected. And it was more of a, okay, you're going to rent this guy from us, so we're not going to sell the farm just to go out and win it. I think they looked around and said there's too many teams in contention and too many good teams out there just to sell the farm just to try to go win it this year. There's some decent players that were moved as compensation. There's some top 100s, but it wasn't these massive hauls, 6-for-1 or anything like that. The Cubs definitely got their farm system definitely restocked with all the guys they let go. And then the Brewers, I think, had the trade of the year though so far.
Yeah.
It was 2 days ago. They picked up John Axford for $1.
Yeah,
because John Axford was not on the 40-man roster, so he could be traded after the deadline. And they traded with the Blue Jays, had him in their farm system because he's making a comeback, and they got him for $1.
Got him for $1.
Did they pay my cash a check? That's all I want to know.
Well, I'd trade for a major leaguer for $1.
Yeah, sure.
I think for his contract, but
yes, exactly. I mean, it's good for that one move. So we've talked about who you think has been, a great surprise. What team, before we sign off here, what team are you most disappointed in, Brett? Jack, you too. I mean, there's a lot of disappointing teams out there to me this year. St. Louis, Minnesota, Chicago. I mean, there's a lot of teams that we had high expectations of in baseball, and they really haven't done what they set out to do. The Twins in the playoffs every year, and now they're
I'll make it very quick. The Atlanta Braves, who I picked to win the World Series. I know Ronald Acuna is hurt. He's out for the year. They weren't playing well when he was in there. During the trade deadline, you'd think they would make a major move. They haven't. They're standing pat. They're only 2 games behind the Mets. You keep waiting for Atlanta to wake up. Freddie Freeman got off to a very slow start. He's coming around. But the Atlanta Braves, my pick to win the World Series, to me, they're the biggest disappointment.
I definitely say that in the AL, probably the Twins. They just had so much talent to start the season, and they're the cellar in the Central, and then probably the Cubs because they had they sold probably the 3 most coveted players in the trade deadline, and they got rid of them, and they're real close to the bottom in the Central there. So those are probably the 2.
And they had a shot at the. I don't know if they were in the playoffs last year during the COVID shortened season.
They lost the Marlins in 2 games.
So there you go. Yeah. So from first all the way down to almost last. And before we only got a few minutes, I think that people underestimated how much COVID affected baseball last year. They always say, the cream goes to the top. No, that's not true. Baseball's a marathon. That was a sprint. And the healthier teams that could put something together. Heck, the Baltimore Orioles were in first for like 3 weeks or something ridiculous. It was a big, big shock, I think, to a lot of people who thought some teams like Florida were really good, and they're really not that good. They were just good for those first 60 games, and there would have been 2/3 more to play. So I think a lot of people overestimated the big effect COVID had on baseball last year, Brett.
All right, so I got 4 quick hitters for you.
Right.
The Florence Red Wolves of the Coastal Plains League are now the Florence Flamingos. Awesome uniform. That's a collegiate summer team. Beloit Snappers, the high A for the Brewers, just opened their brand new stadium yesterday. So that's kind of odd to have a brand new stadium open mid-season. Want to give a shout out to Daniel Brito. He's a Lehigh Valley. He had a medical issue during the game, and the way that the Lehigh Valley and the other team kind of just jumped on the situation, he had to have surgery. So hopefully he gets well soon. And then shout out to the Lookouts, the AA team of the Reds.
All right, there you go. Brett with his 4 quick. I don't know what you want to call them, base hits. I don't know. But anyway, with his 4 quick updates, telling us all about baseball as he always does every week. Major league, college, independent. I think he knows everything about every high school out there, for God's sakes. Brett, thanks for coming in as you have been doing. We enjoy having you on, talking real baseball, not just the popular Major League Baseball players that make $100 million a year. We talk about real baseball. We talk about them too, but I enjoy having somebody in that just really loves the game, is all into it. So, Brett, thanks for joining us again, and we'll check you out again next week.
All right, thank you.
You got it.
Thanks, Brett.
So there you go, Jack. Brett Kell with knowing everything about everything as far as baseball
Well,
goes.
a lot of fun talking baseball and covering all aspects. We could go on and on and on. but-
Oh my God! I mean,
Yeah.
listen, you got a new team coming up to New York. Did you know about that?
No, I didn't know about that too. I was going to make a comment, and I hate to talk on the negative, but Staten Island has to step up. They didn't really support the Staten Island Yankees maybe as strongly as they could have. I know, certain other sporting events like professional boxing years ago, the fans didn't turn out quite as much as they could have for all the shows. And Staten Island's a great borough. I mean, it's a nice place to live. I mean, beautiful territory there, but they've got to step up and make this minor league team their own, So, and if they do, they'll have a good thing. And let's see what goes down. But hopefully Staten Island steps up and supports this team.
Sounds great. We're at the 2-hour mark. Thanks, people, for joining us today. Wednesday, tomorrow, huge boxing show. Iceman John Scully, a current boxer from Star Boxing. Check out the post.
Heavyweight Carlos Takam, who lost to Joe Joyce recently.
And we also have a legend, a featherweight legend coming on tomorrow, folks. Again, it's in the promo. Go to Facebook.
Barry McGuigan.
You don't have to go to promo because Jack will tell you. So,
Clone Cyclone, former featherweight champion.
Jack is very uninterested in promoting our Facebook page, but go check out Max Sports to find out everything on there. But Jack, of course, set us up with
Barry McGuigan.
Both of them. I mean, Star Boxing and
no, Carlos Takam, you got him, Mac. Give yourself credit. That's a good guest. Following the big heavyweight fight he just had, that's yours. You get the credit.
It's through your connections, Jack, that I make all this happen. Through your name, trust me. That's how I work it, folks. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, 8 to 10 a.m. live. Thursday. Have a great Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.